There's a quiet kind of strength that never needs to raise its voice. It doesn't rush to defend itself. It doesn't seek to win the argument or prove a point. It knows that truth is not always loud, and justice is not always immediate. This is the strength the Stoics cultivated, the discipline to stay silent, even when every part of you wants to shout, the courage to walk away without leaving a scar, the wisdom to let the universe handle what your ego wants to control. In a world that rewards performance, silence is often mistaken for weakness. But the Stoics knew better. They practiced restraint, not out of fear, but out of power. They didn't answer every insult. They didn't chase down every rumor. They understood that silence, when chosen with clarity, becomes a statement louder than any defense. Karma is not a mystical punishment system. It's the natural unfolding of cause and effect. What is done in darkness eventually faces the light. And when we step back and allow the consequences to unfold, we practice a kind of moral patience. We train ourselves to remain principled while the world turns. This video explores 7 moments in life when the Stoic path is not to fight, argue, or retaliate, but to pause, to observe, to trust, to remain grounded in virtue while life reveals its own justice. Let us begin. Chapter 1. When you're lied about. It's natural to want to defend yourself when false words are spoken about you. Lies feel like an attack on your character. Your reputation is a reflection of how people perceive your actions, and when that's smeared, anger rises. But the Stoics remind us, your reputation is not your responsibility. Your character is. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If any man despises me, that is his problem. My only concern is not doing or saying anything deserving of contempt." When lies are told, stay calm. Do not chase down every whisper. Do not meet fire with fire. Your energy is too valuable to be spent on battles that will resolve themselves in time. Truth is not fragile. It doesn't need you to scream. It only needs you to live in alignment with it. A lie shouted 100 times still fades before one life lived honestly. Let your consistency speak where words cannot. Let your discipline be the evidence of your truth. Silence here is not surrender. It is self-trust. You trust that the people who matter will see clearly in time. You trust that falsehoods do not stain the soul. You trust that karma, that quiet unfolding of cause and effect, will sort the rest. This kind of silence requires strength. It demands that you rise above the impulse to defend and instead fortify your presence. Every time you choose not to explain yourself to those who misrepresent you, you reclaim your authority. You anchor yourself deeper into your values. Over time, this becomes a kind of freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of public opinion. You no longer chase validation from those who don't understand your path. You stop trying to fix false narratives and instead focus on living in a way that renders them irrelevant. You begin to realize that the truth always finds its way back to the surface, and when it does, your silence will echo as wisdom, not weakness. To practice this in daily life, speak only when it serves truth. Let your words carry weight by reserving them for moments that align with your values. Don't explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Their perception is a reflection of their filters, not your essence. Every unnecessary explanation is a withdrawal from your inner clarity. Choose your audience wisely. Protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Your peace is not just a comfort, it's a form of power. It allows you to think clearly, act wisely, and remain grounded when life shakes. It is the space in which clarity is born and rashness dies. When you honor it, you strengthen the very core of your being. Guard it as you would guard your most valuable possession. Let silence be the gatekeeper. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence under control. It is the breath before action, the pause before reply. In silence, you choose your next step rather than reacting impulsively. When in doubt, hold back. When baited, refrain. When pushed, step back and center yourself again. Every time you practice this restraint, you build a reserve of calm that cannot be easily shaken. That calm becomes a kind of internal armor. It shields you not through aggression, but through resilience. It grants you the grace to move through conflict without carrying it with you. In the moments when everything seems to demand a reaction, your stillness becomes the higher response. In doing this, you develop not only peace, but mastery over yourself. You are no longer driven by every disruption. You become steady, present, and composed, a person who acts, not reacts. This mastery isn't loud or theatrical. It reveals itself in the quiet strength that remains unbroken in the face of chaos. Chapter 2. When someone tries to provoke you. Some people feed off reactions. They poke, prod, insult, or mock in subtle ways, hoping you'll bite. They want your attention because it gives them power. But when you give them nothing, no anger, no response, no shift in your energy, you starve their strategy. Seneca said, "It is better to conquer our grief than to deceive it." The same applies to anger. It is better to conquer it than to feed it. When someone tries to provoke you, staying silent is not passive, it is strategic. You choose not to react because you know your peace is not theirs to play with. You are not their puppet. You are not their project. You are the master of your mind. You do not hand over the keys to your emotions every time someone knocks. You train yourself to remain composed, not to suppress emotion, but to guide it wisely. In daily life, this means pausing when someone insults you, not out of hesitation, but out of choice. It means walking away without fanfare, without turning your back into a performance. It means responding with a look of calm rather than a storm of words, a glance that says more in its stillness than any comeback could. You disarm their attack by refusing to join the game. You do not let their chaos enter your system. The people who seek to provoke often do so from a place of weakness, insecurity, or instability. They may use sarcasm, passive aggression, or loud accusations as weapons, not because they hold truth, but because they lack inner peace. Their aim is not clarity, but disruption. Their power lies entirely in your reaction. The moment you respond, you fuel their strategy. But when you withhold that reaction, you mirror back their emptiness without giving them energy. You deny them the chaos they crave. You reclaim the space within yourself that might have been disturbed. This is not about being unaffected. It's about choosing what affects you. You are not a stone, but a disciplined spirit. You learn to sit with the discomfort without acting from it. You recognize the difference between discomfort and danger, between insult and injury. You respond not with force, but with stillness. That stillness is not emptiness. It is a container for your self-control. Over time, this discipline becomes armor, but not armor that hardens you, armor that frees you. It frees you from the grip of pettiness. It frees you from the traps of ego. The provocations no longer affect you because you no longer give them meaning. You see through them. You understand that not every battle is yours to fight. You outgrow the need to react. You rise beyond the reach of noise. You become someone who isn't easily moved, not because you're numb, but because you've trained yourself to be rooted. Rooted in purpose, in presence, and in principle. You listen for what truly matters. You respond only to what aligns with your highest self. The stronger you grow in this practice, the less external chaos can enter. The storm may rage around you, but your center holds. And when you finally realize that silence is sometimes the sharpest sword, you begin to carry it not with pride, but with the humility of someone who has learned not to cut, but to heal with it. The silence becomes not a weapon, but a wall between you and chaos. a wall built from wisdom, discipline, and peace. Chapter 3. When you're surrounded by gossip. Gossip thrives on participation. It spreads faster than truth and cuts deeper than silence. But the Stoic stands apart. They do not feed the fire. They do not pass along the rumor. They do not join the circle of whispers. Why? Because they know that to speak of others' lives is to abandon control of your own. Epictetus taught, if you hear a word about another, don't pass it on. Don't add your voice to the noise. When surrounded by gossip, staying silent is an act of integrity. You remove yourself from the noise. You rise above the shallow. You protect your own spirit by refusing to injure another's, even in their absence. Gossip may feel harmless in the moment, but it is poison wrapped in entertainment. Every time you speak about someone else without them present, you chip away at your own character. The Stoic understands this and opts for a cleaner conscience over temporary belonging. Silence in these moments becomes a shield. You do not add fuel to fires that serve no good. You do not participate in small talk that makes someone else smaller. You remain rooted in dignity, knowing that a moment of silence is more powerful than 100 clever criticisms. You are not silent because you have nothing to say. You are silent because what you could say would not serve truth or virtue. In practice, this means changing the subject when gossip starts. It means responding with quiet or leaving the room altogether. It means refusing to bond with others through shared judgment. Some will call you cold, distant, or self-righteous. But that's only because your refusal to gossip exposes what they are still indulging in. Your silence shines a light on their noise. That's not your problem. Let it be a mirror. Karma, in this context, is clear. What you speak about others shapes what you eventually face yourself. Your words are not just sound, they are signals. They declare who you are, what you value, and what kind of energy you welcome into your life. Gossip might feel momentarily powerful, but it is a poison that stains both speaker and listener. The energy you pour into tearing down others will be returned in ways you may not expect. What you say in the shadows has a way of echoing in the daylight. The insults whispered behind someone's back often find their way around to your own name. People who gossip with you will gossip about you. That is a law written not in stone, but in human behavior. The same mouths that flatter you in one breath may mock you in the next. Aligning with gossip is building trust on a broken foundation. Sooner or later, it collapses. When you participate in the downfall of others, you plant the seeds of your own discredit. Even those who listen may remember you not for the cleverness of your words, but for the pettiness they revealed. Words sent out in malice become weights that return, often when you least expect them. A single sentence can damage a reputation. A careless opinion can break trust. And once spoken, your words cannot be reclaimed. Choose clarity now over confusion later. Be mindful in the moment so you do not have to make amends in the future. Let your speech be so disciplined that others begin to filter their own words in your presence, not out of fear, but out of respect. Choose silence. Let your actions speak for your values. Let your restraint build a reputation stronger than any clever story you could tell. In a world driven by noise, stillness becomes a form of leadership. When everyone else scrambles to speak, to argue, to insert themselves into the center of attention, you become the rare one who radiates strength through stillness. Your silence is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. People notice the one who doesn't need to speak to be trusted. There is something magnetic about a person who holds their words with reverence, who doesn't use speech to inflate themselves, but to uplift only when needed. You don't need to join the noise to belong. You don't have to echo the crowd to earn your place. True belonging comes when your presence alone earns respect. And that respect lasts longer when it isn't built on spectacle, but on steadiness. You need to stand in quiet truth to become someone worth trusting, because when people know you do not speak recklessly, they begin to listen when you do speak. Your silence gives weight to your words. Your restraint builds anticipation. You become a rare voice in a world overflowing with noise. The Stoic way is not to speak more, it's to speak wisely, and often not at all. Your silence is a form of emotional discipline, a declaration that you value what is sacred, that you understand the cost of words and the impact they leave behind. Silence is not empty. It is full of your integrity. It carries the memory of what you withhold for the sake of peace. Let it carry the weight your words do not need to bear. Let it remind others that your strength is not in what you say, it's in what you don't need to. Chapter 4. When you're being judged unfairly. There will be moments when people misunderstand you. They judge your motives without knowing your heart. They criticize your choices without knowing your circumstances. And it stings. But the Stoics remind us, you are not obligated to explain yourself to everyone. Most people judge from their own wounds, not from your truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In the face of unfair judgment, stay silent. Not because you lack a defense, but because you choose not to need one. The moment you begin defending yourself against every false assumption, you hand your peace over to the court of public opinion. And that court is often ruled by emotion, not truth. You keep walking in your truth. You keep showing up with integrity. You let your life, not your arguments, testify for you. There is a power in letting time and consistency speak where explanations would only muddy the waters. There will always be those who assume, misread, and criticize from the surface. You do not owe them your clarity. You owe yourself your focus. The more energy you spend trying to correct their narratives, the more you drift from your own. Silence becomes your statement, not of weakness, but of unwavering direction. You are not here to convince the world, you are here to be real in it. And when you are anchored in authenticity, judgment loses its grip. In daily life, this might mean not responding to harsh emails, not clarifying your every move to a doubtful coworker, not justifying your dreams to those who doubt you. Instead of explaining yourself endlessly, you choose to refine your craft, live your values, and let your results speak for you. When your actions are aligned with your principles, you don't need permission to keep going. You let success, not defensiveness, be your response. Karma doesn't require you to prove yourself. It only asks you to be yourself, fully, honestly, and without apology. And when you walk that path with integrity, those who judge too soon will either correct themselves or fade into irrelevance. You won't need to announce your worth. You'll embody it. The Stoic trusts in the long game. They know that silence, lived with virtue, is never wasted. It always comes back around as truth revealed. Chapter 5. When someone has betrayed your trust. Betrayal is one of the deepest wounds. It comes not from strangers, but from those you let close. When trust is broken, the instinct is to lash out, to expose, to shame. But Stoicism offers another path. Do not meet betrayal with rage. Meet it with silence, with stillness, with an exit. You do not need to scorch the bridge to leave it behind. You only need to stop crossing it. Seneca wrote, "It is the power of a great mind to disdain injustice rather than to avenge it." This doesn't mean tolerating disloyalty. It means letting your departure say what words cannot. Words may fall on deaf ears, or worse, be twisted into new wounds. But your absence, deliberate, quiet, complete, cannot be misinterpreted. It becomes its own kind of truth. It becomes a line drawn with grace, not bitterness. It means honoring your values by refusing to stay where they are not respected. Where you are not seen clearly, you stop showing up. Where loyalty is a performance, you step behind the curtain and walk away. Your silence in this moment is not weakness, it is dignity. It is the understanding that some situations don't deserve your final word, they deserve your absence. Silence is not retreat, it's elevation. It's the ability to rise above the wreckage without needing to gather the pieces, to move forward without needing to make noise about what you're leaving behind. That's not indifference, it's evolution. In practice, this means cutting ties without spectacle, not to punish, but to preserve yourself. Some exits don't need a speech, they need stillness. You walk away not because you want to create distance, but because you've reclaimed your right to peace. You're no longer willing to explain your pain to someone who caused it. You're done trying to make someone see what they're unwilling to face. It means choosing peace over confrontation, because you've realized it won't change the truth. Truth doesn't always need to be shouted to be real. Often, the clearest truths are those lived out quietly, not those debated endlessly. It means refusing to degrade yourself by explaining betrayal to the betrayer. Your worth is not up for their approval. You no longer seek closure from someone who created chaos. You no longer wait for understanding from someone who built their comfort on your confusion. Instead, you redirect that energy inward, toward healing, rebuilding, and growing. It means leaving the story unfinished in their hands while you begin a better one in yours, written in a language they may never understand, self-respect. And that new story doesn't begin with revenge, it begins with renewal. Karma always circles back. It may not arrive on your timeline, but it never loses its way. It doesn't need reminders or interventions. It simply follows the law of return. The people who broke your trust will eventually face their own undoing because they chose it. Their actions set the wheel in motion. You don't need to warn them. You don't need to announce their mistakes to the world. Life has its own way of revealing what's hidden, not because you wish them harm, but because harm done cannot outrun the hand that delivered it. Every betrayal creates a consequence, even if it's delayed. What you walk away from in silence, life will address in its own time. It may not happen in front of you, and it may not come in the form you imagined, but it will come. The universe has a rhythm to it, quiet, consistent, patient. The laws of cause and effect move quietly but precisely. You don't have to orchestrate justice for it to happen. Your only role is to live in alignment with what's right and to release what no longer aligns. Not on your schedule, but on a schedule aligned with justice. And when that moment comes, you won't need to be there to see it. That's the gift of letting go. You'll have already moved on. Your hands will be clean, your heart unburdened, your soul intact. Let your silence be your boundary. Let it be the final message that echoes long after you've gone, not with bitterness, but with resolve, not with anger, but with clarity. You don't need to slam the door, just stop holding it open. A door can close without sound and still never reopen. Don't linger at the threshold waiting for someone to appreciate the access they abused. Some people will only realize your worth once your presence is no longer available. And by then, your silence will have spoken volumes. Let karma do the rest, while you move forward in quiet strength. You are not leaving to hurt them. You are leaving to save yourself. You are not proving anything. You are preserving everything that matters. Your peace, your self-worth, your dignity. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all, because silence, when rooted in truth, becomes louder than justice shouted in anger. It is not empty. It is full of grace, wisdom, and strength earned through restraint. Chapter 6. When someone publicly disrespects you. There will be moments when someone crosses a line in front of others, belittling you, mocking your beliefs, or challenging your value in a room full of witnesses. It stings, not just because of the words, but because of the public nature of the blow. Your pride wants to strike back. Your ego wants to defend itself on the spot. But Stoicism teaches us that true power does not perform. It endures. It remains composed under pressure. It doesn't rise to every bait. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." In a world that constantly demands your reaction, this is a revolutionary idea. You don't have to fight back in that moment. You don't have to match volume with volume. You can meet humiliation with silence, not as submission, but as supreme control. To stay silent when someone disrespects you publicly is not weakness. It's proof that your sense of self is not dependent on approval or applause. It shows that your value is rooted internally, not borrowed from applause or shattered by mockery. You do not need to reclaim your worth from someone who never gave it to you. Their ignorance does not diminish your essence. Their loudness does not mute your truth. Instead, you let the moment pass. You observe, but you don't absorb. You hold your center. You become the calm eye in the storm, unshaken by its fury. And when the moment ends, you are still standing in your integrity while the other person is left with the weight of their behavior. The dignity of your silence becomes louder than their insult. There is a time to speak and a time to stay silent. Let your wisdom identify those moments. The ability to discern between the two is not natural. It is earned through patience, self-reflection, and disciplined awareness. Let that wisdom be forged not in emotion, but in discipline. Emotions are waves. They rise, they crash, and they pass. Discipline is the shoreline that remains unmoved. When emotion rushes forward, pause. When ego flares up, breathe. Wisdom grows in the pause between impulse and response. Do not let pride decide for you. Pride is loud, fast, and shallow. It wants the last word, the final blow, the immediate validation. But the Stoic lives not for appearances, but for inner stability. Pride speaks quickly, often without weighing the cost, and what it gains in the moment, it often loses in the long term. But the Stoic cultivates the discernment to know when silence protects peace and when speech upholds truth. To stay silent is not always to withhold, it can be to protect. To speak is not always to assert, it can be to serve. True discernment lies in knowing the difference. Not every insult requires a defense. Not every confrontation deserves your voice. Just because something demands your attention doesn't mean it deserves it. Just because someone expects a reaction doesn't mean you owe them one. Learn to pause, to observe the emotional storm without being swept into it. Observe like a mountain watches the clouds, present, unmoved, patient. The power is not in the storm, it's in the stillness that outlasts it. And when the time does come to speak, let it be with calm, concise clarity. Your voice should not tremble with emotion, but ring with principle. Let your words be sharp in meaning, not in tone. Clarity, not volume, is what cuts through confusion. Speak with conviction and precision, not volume or venom. Let your voice be a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Measured, exact, clean. Keep your voice steady, grounded, not cold, but centered. You are not trying to defeat a person. You are representing your values. This isn't about winning, it's about holding the moral high ground without letting ego steal the reins. Winning in the Stoic sense is not about domination. It's about not being ruled by your lower impulses. It's about acting from virtue, not reaction. Speak like someone who knows they could destroy, but chooses not to. Speak like someone who has tamed their power, not someone who flaunts it. That restraint, visible, calm, deliberate, becomes power in itself. People may not always remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Your restraint will leave a longer impression than your retaliation ever could. Be serious, be indifferent, not unfeeling but detached from needing a specific result. Your seriousness comes not from tension, but from conviction. Your indifference is not carelessness, it is composure. Indifference here does not mean apathy. It means not being controlled by the outcome. It means releasing your grip on the need to be understood, vindicated, or praised. You do your part and release the rest. That release is not giving up, it is rising above. You trust that virtue carries its own weight and doesn't need external validation to be complete. This will disarm them, not because you beat them at their game, but because you refuse to play. You stepped off the battlefield before they even arrived, because they came for a reaction and received none. They rehearsed lines, anticipated chaos, planned their moves expecting resistance, and were met instead with stillness. They prepared for a battle that never came. Their emotional weapons, sharpened and ready, had no opponent. Their hostility had nowhere to land. People expect noise when they throw a match. They expect fire, they expect sparks, they expect escalation, retaliation, an emotional spectacle that justifies their aggression. Their energy is fueled by your reaction, and when they don't get it, their momentum dissolves. When all they get is your composure, pure, unshaken, unbothered, they are left with nothing to feed from. They grow confused, frustrated, off balance, because your stillness contradicts their entire strategy. Their behavior, loud and chaotic, begins to look excessive, even to themselves. Their strategy collapses under the weight of its own emptiness. And that silence, that lack of response, becomes the loudest statement in the room. It's the unsaid that echoes longest. It becomes undeniable. It commands attention not by demand, but by depth. It speaks to your strength, your discipline, your self-command. It shows that you are not someone to be provoked into pettiness. You didn't need to yell to be heard. You didn't need to strike to prove you could. You didn't flinch. You didn't flail. You didn't explain. Your stillness said everything that needed saying. They're left standing in the mess they created, alone. Their need for conflict becomes self-evident. And you remain clear-eyed, upright, untouched. That kind of silence is unnerving to the unprincipled because it is unfamiliar. It is not weakness, it is a reflection. It makes them reflect, even if only in discomfort. They expected an opponent, not a mirror, and now they must face what they brought into the room. It's not just the lack of reaction that unsettles them, it's the mirror it holds up. It exposes them, their tone, their intention, their emptiness. It shows them who they are without giving them someone to blame. It holds a mirror they weren't ready to look into. It brings them into contact with themselves in a way your words never could. And that moment of forced reflection is the beginning of their own unraveling. Not because you punished them, but because you gave them no place to run. You don't lower your voice to match the noise. You don't trade dignity for the illusion of dominance. You don't descend into their theater. You elevate the room with your restraint. You remind others, just by being who you are, that power doesn't always come with volume, and respect doesn't have to arrive with retaliation. You create an atmosphere of reflection simply by refusing to engage in escalation. You create space where others feel what they brought to the moment. And in that space, truth begins to surface. You show what it means to lead by example, not by controlling others, but by mastering yourself. That's the difference. You reveal who you are, and in doing so, you reveal who they are, not by accusation, but by contrast. Your character becomes a quiet challenge to theirs. That is leadership. That is command. That is character. That is Stoic integrity lived in real time. And it's not performative. It's practiced. It's not a tactic. it's who you've become. Let your silence, when chosen, become an instrument of clarity, not an absence, but a precision tool. It is the space where truth breathes, where chaos cannot survive. Let your speech, when given, be a reflection of what is just, not what is reactionary. Let it be shaped not by pride, but by principle. A Stoic does not stay silent out of weakness, but out of patience. A Stoic does not speak to attack, but to illuminate. Their voice is rare not because they lack insight, but because they value its impact. They know that what is rare is powerful, and what is measured is unforgettable. They know timing matters. They know truth lands more powerfully when not forced, but revealed. Know the difference, and you will not only speak wisely, you will live wisely. You will become someone whose presence carries weight even in silence. You will carry yourself through insult, provocation, and disrespect, not as a victim, but as a steward of your own peace. You will walk through the fire and not be burned, because you carried the flame of discipline within. And in the end, that flame becomes your light, not to burn others, but to guide yourself forward through the darkness of noise and ego. That is the mark of the Stoic, not to dominate the world, but to never let the world dominate you. Chapter 7. When you feel the urge to seek revenge. Few temptations feel as primal and intoxicating as revenge. To strike back, to level the pain, to restore a sense of justice by tipping the scale with your own hands. But revenge does not bring balance. It brings continuation. It turns wounds into weapons. It anchors you to the very thing you claim to rise above. Seneca warned, "He who seeks revenge should dig 2 graves." The Stoics knew that retaliation is not strength. It is surrender. It is letting your emotions dictate your values. And nothing enslaves the spirit more than living by impulse. To stay silent when revenge calls is the highest form of control. It is restraint as rebellion. It is choosing not to perpetuate the cycle of harm, but to end it within yourself. It is turning away not because you're weak, but because you're powerful enough to resist the most seductive kind of emotional impulse. Vengeance tempts the ego with the illusion of justice, but what it really offers is bondage. It anchors your identity to the pain of the past and disguises it as empowerment. To walk away, to refuse retaliation, is to declare that your soul is no longer for rent to those who tried to break it. It is choosing your path over your pride. Pride is reactive. Purpose is deliberate. The Stoic chooses the latter, not out of submission, but sovereignty. It is walking away from the fire because you no longer wish to carry the smoke. Because you've learned that the weight of revenge doesn't burn your enemies, it burns you from the inside out. You do not need to show them what they lost. You do not need to craft a response that stings. You do not need to remind them of your worth. You only need to live in a way that shows what you refuse to become: bitter, reactionary, small. The greater message is not in striking back, but in refusing to descend. It is in becoming untouchable by the very darkness that tried to consume you. In practice, this might mean deleting the message you wanted to send, the one dripping with cleverness and venom, designed to cut deep and leave scars. It might mean stepping back from a plan designed to hurt someone who hurt you, even if it feels like justice. It might mean walking past their provocations without turning your head. It might mean turning that same energy inward, toward rebuilding, not breaking, toward becoming more resilient, more creative, more disciplined, toward reclaiming the time and energy they once drained from you. It might mean focusing that energy into your goals, your health, your peace. That is the alchemy of Stoicism, turning insult into insight, pain into fuel, injustice into strength. Every time you resist revenge, you regain your power. You prove to yourself that you're no longer controlled by what happened to you. You are led by who you want to become. You no longer live in reaction. You live in direction. You close the chapter instead of writing another page of conflict. You leave the story unfinished, not because you lost, but because you outgrew the plot. You walked off the stage of their drama and stepped into the clarity of your own life. Karma doesn't need your help. It only needs your absence from the cycle of pain. Your silence, your detachment, your refusal to participate in their destruction. This is what allows the consequences to unfold without interference. It works best when you step aside and let it unfold without obstruction. Let those who act unjustly answer to their own decisions. Let their own choices become their education. Their actions are seeds. They will face the harvest. Every action creates its echo. Every intention carves its return. Let time do what anger cannot. Let consequence be their instructor, not you. And let your silence signal not defeat, but elevation. Let it say, I'm done here. Let it say, this story no longer includes me. You chose healing over hostility. You chose growth over grudges. You chose to invest in your future, not your frustration, and that choice will free you. Every time you don't take the bait, you rise. Every time you choose to heal in private rather than retaliate in public, you become untouchable, not because you're hardened, but because you're whole. And in the end, the greatest revenge is no revenge. It is not spite, it is not exposure, it is not proving a point, orchestrating their downfall, or waiting for karma with a smirk. It is not trying to control their consequences or hoping they hurt the way you did. The greatest revenge is simply living well, so well that their actions fade like dust in the rearview mirror. It is living with such clarity, purpose and joy that their memory becomes irrelevant, that their name no longer tightens your chest, that their choices no longer pull at your peace. It is smiling without pretending, succeeding without bitterness, loving without walls, and realizing you didn't need closure, you needed freedom. It is waking up one day and realizing you haven't thought about them in weeks because you outgrew them, you outgrew the pain, because you no longer need it to define your narrative, because you cleared space in your soul for something greater, because the energy that once burned to be heard has been redirected toward building something far more lasting. You no longer orbit the wound. You no longer center your life around their shadow. The story they were part of no longer writes your days. Their presence fades not from denial, but from distance, emotional, spiritual, and intentional. You've moved into a new space entirely, one where the air is clear, the mind is still, and your energy is no longer shaped by past harm, where your attention is fully yours again. That is the Stoic path. That is power not shouted, but lived. Not theatrical, but unshakable. Power not born from control over others, but from deep command over the self. Power that remains calm in the face of insult, not because it cannot strike, but because it no longer needs to. Power that does not waver when challenged, does not panic when provoked. Power that does not respond to insult with insecurity, but with stillness. Power that cannot be provoked, cannot be baited, and cannot be stolen, because it comes from within. It comes from clarity, discipline, self-respect, and a refusal to participate in anything that costs your peace. And that refusal is not resistance, it's mastery. And once you know what it feels like to carry that kind of peace, you will never trade it again for temporary revenge. Because that peace is not a feeling, it's a foundation. It's a daily strength that supports every decision, every boundary, every step forward. It is the invisible shield you wear in rooms that used to make you shrink. You'll see how small revenge is in the face of your healing, how trivial your need to prove anything becomes when your energy is fully invested in growth. You'll see how little they matter when your life is full, so full of purpose, connection, and creation that there's no room left for resentment. You'll realize that healing isn't forgetting, it's releasing. And it creates space where your past no longer speaks louder than your present. You'll know that retribution is noise, but peace is power, a kind of power that doesn't shout or demand, but simply is. It doesn't need spectacle to be known. It's the kind of power that commands respect through presence alone, a kind of power that walks into a room and settles it without a word. Its strength is quiet, not because it lacks force, but because it's anchored in something deeper than dominance. It's anchored in clarity. It comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you will no longer entertain. And once you've built that peace, you will protect it fiercely, not defensively, but respectfully. You'll recognize how rare it is and how easily it can be disturbed by the shallow pull of drama. You'll guard your mind like sacred ground. You won't waste it on petty arguments, on temporary battles, or on shallow victories. You won't spend it trying to win people who never valued you, or to prove yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You won't waste it on petty drama, on the need to be right, or on the desire to get even. You'll see clearly how costly it is to keep explaining yourself, defending yourself, or chasing closure that never comes. You'll know your peace is priceless, and you'll become a person who leaves quietly, fully, without needing the last word. You will have tasted something far more satisfying than retribution, your own freedom, the kind of freedom that allows you to live each day on your own terms. The kind of freedom that doesn't ask for permission or recognition. It doesn't need applause or acknowledgement. It doesn't wait to be seen to be real. It moves silently and steadily. The kind of freedom that doesn't demand attention. It just walks away, calmly, quietly, completely, and never looks back. Because it knows what's ahead matters far more than what was left behind. And that clarity, that forward motion, is the truest revenge of all. Not pain given, but peace kept. In these 7 moments, when lied about, provoked, surrounded by gossip, judged unfairly, betrayed, publicly disrespected, or tempted to seek revenge, the Stoic response is not rage, not debate, not retaliation.